we finally have found someone to really get into making your brand more inclusive. This is a very important topic. And today, joining me is Cass, a professional chaos whisperer. And we're going to be talking about the secret to an inclusive brand that builds trust and, most importantly, drives sales. But before we get into it, I must give Cass a moment to shine. You tell us more about yourself. Thank you, Queen, so much for being here with me today. Please take it away.
CJ, I just am so excited to be here. Literally, I feel like from the moment that we met, I was like, this is my girl, right? And it's only fitting that you say that you tell yourself, like, your girl, CJ. I just thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform that you've built, specifically for Black women by a Black woman is nails. But enough about you. Let's talk about me. So my name is Cass, she, her. I am a professional chaos whisperer. And what that means is I take big, complicated, systemic, mostly problematic ideas and break them down into ways that people can understand. And you can understand the way that they either impact your life, impact your business, impact your interpersonal relationships and your interactions. We all live in these systems of power, control, oppression, suppression. And how can we make sense of that, but still maneuver within them? That's what I specialize in. I have a undergraduate degree from DePaul University in Women's and Gender Studies. My master's is in Inclusive Leadership from the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner. I live in the United States, in Texas, and I have a tiny human. She is 9 as of recording this. I'm a cheer mom. I also love to write. So my primary gig is a writer for really the biggest tech-focused magazine and digital media space in the United States. Hopefully in the world, we're growing a lot. So I write a column on inclusive leadership strategy. What does that mean for people who are working in tech? I consider myself an Afrofuturist in the making. I love the way we can think about and understand and learn our past as African people of the diaspora and use that to envision a future that is tech-centered and tech-focused. I love being on podcasts. I host a podcast. I am a speaker. I am an entrepreneur. I am a jack of all trades, master of none, and I wear that proudly. I love puzzles and painting. I do a lot of stuff. I read. And really, truly, podcasts are my church. Like, I love listening. I love learning. I love appearing on podcasts. So I'm just really glad to be here and spend time with you.
I was going to say, you do all the things. And just when you're talking about your training and your education, I'm like, okay. So basically what Cass is saying is I have the perfect person on to have this conversation, because we need to talk about this more and more, especially now with it's not just, I don't want to say that it's a trending topic, but it kind of is a trending topic when it comes to like DEI. To me, I think at this point, it should be obvious that we are doing our very best to be diligent with being more diverse, being more equitable, being more inclusive. Before we actually get into the actual topic, you're doing all of the things, which also includes you being a side hustler. So tell me just about how long you've been a side hustler. How are you navigating both worlds? What is helping you to be able to do all of those things?
So honestly, I think I've been a side hustler since the beginning, right? I was the neighborhood babysitter. So I went and I think I was maybe like 12 or 13, and I took a CPR class just because at the time I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to go into healthcare. And so my mom signs me up for this class. I go and I realize, oh, that's something that differentiates me and sets me apart from other babysitters in the neighborhood. So I made flyers and I went and I was the neighborhood babysitter because I was certified in CPR. And if something happened to your child, I could take care of it. And that was at 12 and 13. I started working in hospitality. I've always had like, this is my jobby job, but this is the thing that I do that also could make me money, but also I just find interesting. So I've been a side hustler for a long time. I'm not going to say how many years, but you know, I'm a geriatric millennial. So we'll just put that out there. Specifically for my business now, Know Better, Do Better Consulting, I started that during the pandemic. And I was really encouraged by my friend and mentor, Melissa Majors, and she subcontracted with me. And she really was talking to me about like growing a business and what that took and all these things. And she was like, you really could just start a business. It's really not that hard. You could just have it there, and it creates an opportunity for you to build not just growth of your brand, of your personal brand, but it gives you some validity in the market. It gives you some tax benefits. It gives you some things that you can do to be intentional about where you want your career to go. And then you always have it to fall back on if something happens in your jobby job. And at the time, I was working in sales at an events company. And, you know, it was the pandemic. There were no events. There were no sales to be made. So I needed to have something to bridge that gap, just with her encouragement and her insight and a little bit of guidance. So we had one conversation, and at the end of the conversation, she sent me a disclosure agreement, and we started working together, and she really like helped me and to grow what is now a full service consulting business focused on inclusive leadership development specifically.
DEI. And being inclusive. What is the one thing people really actually need to understand about the topic, anything to do with DEI?
So first, I would say that DEI and inclusive leadership are not the same. Inclusive leadership is part of a DEI strategy, but they're not one and the same, and you can't really replace them. Inclusive leadership really is about how do we meet people in their ability to work, their ability to learn, and the mechanisms they need in order to do their job well. How do we as leaders embody that so that we can get the best outcomes for the people that we are leading, right? Mm-hmm. DEI specifically is about exactly what it stands for. It's about diversity, it's about equity, and it's about inclusion, right? And so diversity is a metric. You are not a diverse person. It is a way of measuring how diverse your organization is. Equity is about money, how you're making money, who has access to money, who has access to capital. Are we paying people the same rate for the same amount of work? How is that based off of our diversity metric? And then inclusion, which is what I lean into, is how do those things add up together to create an environment of inclusion, right? And ultimately, what we're leading to is now we add a B, which is belonging. But all of those things and an organizational framework lead to organizational justice. And that's really what DEI is meant to solve. It's meant to solve for the injustices that happen in an organization historically. And it's a strategy to make those things right and make those groups and those targeted minorities whole. But inclusive leadership is for everyone. It's really about how do you make sure that you know your people that you're leading well enough and make sure that they have the tools and the environment to do their job well. They're not one and the same. We've spent so much time thinking about these terms rather than thinking about their practical applications and the justice part that they're meant to serve. I don't honestly care what you call it, as long as people are getting the things and tools and the time and the infrastructure they need in order to do their job well and to thrive, period.
Period. Yes, love it. Okay. With how you just explain things and thinking of someone in their business now, an entrepreneur or a side hustler like yourself, especially as a solopreneur, how does she incorporate inclusive leadership into her brand to make sure her brand is inclusive and her messaging is aligned where she needs it to be aligned, even if like she doesn't necessarily, I don't want to keep saying she, because the audience predominantly is women identified. So how would she ensure
that you just did it? You just exercised inclusive leadership right there. You knew that your target audience was she, uses she, her pronouns, identifies as women, probably a Black woman. You know that is the core people who listen to you. But you also recognize that anybody could be listening to you at any time. So you took ownership of the fact that, you know what, I don't want to keep saying she, even though I know that's my target audience. I could also be talking to a transgender man. I could be talking
Right.
to,
Yeah.
right? That right there, recognizing that even though you have a core demographic that you're appealing to, your content, your leadership, your product could be bought by anybody. It's for this particular person, but it is not only for that particular person.
Right.
You just did it. And we're done.
Oh, now we're done. Thank you. We're off for drinks, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. So basically and me just doing that is, I am very mindful that who I want to speak to or who I draw in. But like you said, there are others who might be tuned in. And I don't want anyone to feel excluded, because it has been pointed out. My mom actually was like, you keep saying she and her. And I'm like, because, that's my audience. That's who I'm targeting. But I mean, the message and what I convey in these conversations can be applied to everyone. So I don't necessarily want anyone to feel excluded, but at the same time, I want to make sure those who I want to include feel included. If that makes any sense, right?
That's so important, because one, how many times and how many spaces do we as Black women enter into and we are visibly excluded? Right. And I think that the pendulum swing back on DEI is like, well, you're making these spaces specifically for insert targeted minority group here. That means that you're excluding this. And that is not what that means. Right? It's recognizing that historically, the places that have excluded us explicitly. And the expectation is, if we create a space that includes us explicitly, that means we're also doing a topsy-turvy inversion of what already existed. And that's not what we're doing, right? We're writing something that has historically excluded us, but that doesn't mean you can't come and hang out and be included. And I would argue that by focusing on the most historically excluded, we have the opportunity to include the most people.
And you know how you just answered the question that I was asking, in the conversation, because I was gonna ask, I was like, say, how does she develop an inclusive brand without it seeming like I'm only doing this because this is something I should be doing? Like, how does she make it so that, my message is conveyed the way it needs to be conveyed and who it needs to resonate with? It resonates with that group or that person without making it seem like I'm excluding anyone else.
I would also add in that it's okay to be explicit about who your audience is, right? Because not everybody is for everybody, right? Like, not every product is for every product. Some people are just not going to like you. And then some people are just not going to like your product. They're not going to need what you're offering, right? And that's okay. Your brand, your product, your whatever that is solving for a specific challenge or issue. Hopefully you have gone through enough branding strategy to know that your niche is this, and you are solving this for this client and this person and this company or whatever that may be. And that's great. You have to know what your vertical is, what your market is, who you're appealing to. The thing is, you also never know who you could be appealing to that is not in your explicit market. And so being mindful of the fact, like you just said, of in my language, I'm saying she, but this could also be they, them. This could also be he, him. Like, that could be all those things is a good step. I think also being authentic in your desire to serve certain demographics is acceptable, because people are going to be drawn to authenticity, right? This is where knowing better can help you do better, right? Which is the name of my company.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't really know what we are communicating. And so by knowing what you're communicating, you actually can do better in that communication. Okay. So for me, I know that I speak a lot in the tech space and a lot in tech equity and the ethics around, especially like right now, the ethics around AI and the inclusion of, and like that tech equity gap, right? Who has access to the internet is a huge thing right now. We think so much about cybersecurity and all these things, assuming everyone has access to the same devices, which is just not the case, right? Like 20% of the world right now is not even online, and another 10% is just now getting online. So that's a third of our global community who does not have access to the internet at all. I talk a lot about that, but the skills in order to build tech equity are transferable. So I don't have to just talk about these things. I can talk about all these things over here that have to do with empathy and understanding and psychological safety, vulnerability, authenticity. Those are transferable. So in the same way that our language can be transferable as well, and we just have to make sure we know who we're talking to, we're targeting that group, but being aware that this can be with anybody. This can talk to anyone.
So one thing she needs to be mindful of is coming across authentically and understanding, you know what, I'm not trying to speak to or to reach everyone, but I do hope that when I do reach the people or person that I'm trying to reach, others understand that I'm not necessarily trying to exclude them. Because what I think is important when it comes to marketing and it comes to your messaging, showing up online and showing up in that space, is people don't lose themselves in all of the noise, right? And trying to do something that isn't necessarily aligned with how they typically would do things, just because they feel like, well, if I do or say this, then, I've hit the nail on the head when it comes to marketing, but then, they're not showing up authentically, right? So it comes back to, again, to that authenticity in order to make sure your message, it's palpable, essentially, so that you can attract the right people. And then once you attract the right people, that is what will essentially drive sales for them.
And I think, and authenticity can be such a loaded topic and loaded word, right? Because I instantly think, who has the right to be authentic, right? When we're thinking about powers and dynamics of social control, right? Like racism, sexism, misogyny, all those things. Certain folks have the right to show up authentic and other folks don't. And so we as Black women, we have a responsibility to ourselves to know what it means to be unapologetically authentic to ourselves. And that takes work and that takes time. And anybody who is a solopreneur, entrepreneur knows that you really got to know what your North Star is and what your why is in order to keep going. And that in and of itself is building your authentic muscle, right? And knowing that sometimes when we show up in spaces as our authentic self, we won't be welcome. But that doesn't mean that you're not worthy of being in those spaces. That just means that the space is not the right space for you. They're not ready for your authenticity, for your version of your brand, and leaning into and understanding that. That to me is the first step to inclusive leadership, is really understanding who you are and how you can show up and how you can show up well, and understanding that the world may not be ready for that version of you, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you stop doing what you're doing. You keep going, right? And I think right now with the blowback of DEI, a lot of organizations did not take the time to understand what their authentic DEI strategy is going to be. They just were trying to do it because it was going to make them hopefully more revenue. And now we're seeing how deeply ingrained was your commitment to building equity, inclusion, diversity, belonging, and justice if you were able to eliminate the program with an email. Like he wasn't really about this life.
For sure. You're absolutely, completely right.
Yeah, I got a lot of hot takes. Anyway.
I know. And speaking of those hot takes, what do you have coming up?
Yes. Oh my gosh. The best place to find me and where I talk the most is going to be on LinkedIn. So just find me, Cass R. Cooper, on LinkedIn. I made a commitment to myself at the beginning of the year to post 3 videos a week. So you all come on this journey. Go look at my old videos. Like I just, to me, I think like LinkedIn is such a great community, and I have really enjoyed building my personal brand there. You can also find me on my website, iamcasscooper.com. Easy to remember. You can catch me on TikTok at just_Cass 2.0, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be a lot of mom-daughter content. I hang out there with my broke best friend, aka my 9-year-old. But those are the best places to find me. I do have an ebook that's coming up. I'm so excited. Yeah. It's all about, and it really does target Black women specifically. Again, it's for anybody. But there's an endemic of Black women burnout right now. And so many of us are in that 92% and are just kind of sitting back and just kind of trying to figure out where our healing is. So it's a book and a workbook that is aimed for Black women called Harmony Not Hustle, 5 Steps to Work-Life Rhythm, because I don't believe in work-life balance. Balance doesn't exist. You will never.
A whole other conversation.
We'll save that for the next time I come. Once the ebook is out, then we'll talk about it again. But you're never gonna life as much as you work, and you're never gonna work as much as you life. Like, you just have to figure out how can you fit all those things together. And so it's 5 practical steps, and then it's got some questions and some reflective exercises in there. So it should be coming out in May. Please, listeners, hold me accountable. Email me, send me a message on LinkedIn. Where is the ebook, girl? Get it together, because I made that promise to myself, and I want to make sure that I honor that.
Okay, it's out there now. There's an ebook coming out, but definitely, yes, you must find her on LinkedIn and consume her content. She is great. As you can tell just from this little conversation that we had, that you want to hear more from Cass. She's just such an engaging speaker and you can completely draw you in. I'm like, you gotta come on my podcast, okay? Yes. And I'm so glad you said yes. Absolutely. But before I absolutely let you go, what is your nugget?
I want to give honor to a dear friend of mine, Alexandria Matheson. She is an amazing person who works in cybersecurity, and she is very committed to her white woman allyship. And she said this thing to me a few months ago, and I actually have it on a sticky note right here. And I want to leave everybody with this. Say the hard truths to yourself, to other people, because it's in the truth that we can really find the most freedom.
Yes. Perfect. I don't even want to say anything else after that other than thank you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. I can talk to you for hours, girl.
I was going to say this is just a recording, but we're going to stop recording and keep talking.
I love that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.